Before starting this video, I wanted to let you know there are a lot of camera issues. If you have a problem with a camera that's constantly auto-focusing, auto-adjusting the light, then I'd recommend you to either simply listen to the introduction or to skip it entirely and go straight to the movie reviews. You can use the timestamps in the video to skip accordingly. That is all I wanted to say. Enjoy the video. Welcome to Laser Reviews. Today's video will be a bit different than usual. It will be more personal. I will of course also be talking about movies, but I want to address the blind elephant in the room. A few weeks ago I suffered from a retinal detachment. I quickly went in for surgery, and as you can see I was operated on. But in this whole period, before surgery, after surgery, still now to some extent, I had this inane fear of going blind, as there was a real risk I would go blind. And I was seeing myself going blind. As such, I was rethinking my whole life. I was thinking about what would I do as a blind person? What could I do? All my hobbies revolve around being blind. I was in some sense seeing my life flash before me, not in the sense I was going to die, but it would have to be a completely new life if I was losing my eyesight. And that is a scary experience. It is an experience where you reevaluate a lot of things. It is an experience where you try to figure out where can I go from here, what will my life be, and where you of course hope for the best, but you're also bracing for the worst. In some sense, it's actually what my life has been for the past 10 years. And it's because I have a retinal detachment on my right eye, but I have also had one on my left eye. I am having very bad eyesight. I will talk about movies that focus around being blind, blindness, or some other aspect of losing your eyesight. I could not find many movies on this topic, sadly. I did find a few. Maybe there are more just hidden somewhere. I'm not actually capable of reading much at the moment, meaning also I had to limit my selection to, well, English movies, English language movies, because I can't read subtitles. Not for a few more weeks at least. And I'm not blind. I don't know what it is living with a blind person. I don't know what it is being a blind person. I don't know what it would be being a blind person that has been blind since birth and one who has actually lost sight in life. I've experienced aspects of it momentarily, and I have feared for it, but I can't talk about if these movies are doing it justice. I can't say if they're realistic. I can't say if the acting is realistic. So I cannot really discuss or reflect on the movies for how they treat being blind, for how realistic they are, if they're doing it justice. I will not talk about any social, political commentary that these movies might have. I will talk about what is the viewing experience of these movies. Should you watch them? Shouldn't you watch them? Not should you watch them if you're blind, or this is a really good movie to learn about blindness. No, just from pure entertainment value, as I usually do on this channel. It's usually just, entertainment value from a movie and then my thoughts about them. And we will talk about that soon. There's a marker in the video you can click on to jump right to my review. But at first I want to talk about what I've been through to give you an idea of my relation to this topic. But even more so, I know this is not a big platform for doing so, but I do want to raise some awareness of retinal detachment because it is something most people don't know enough about. And I didn't know enough about it, even though I've been born with very bad eyesight. I didn't know enough about it to save the vision on my left eye. Retinal detachment can manifest itself in various ways. So the first one I received when I was 19. I started seeing a bit blurry vision. It's not that uncommon for me, considering my eyesight is bad, so I sometimes have a few days or a few hours where my eyesight gets a bit blurry. So I wasn't really reacting to it at first, and it was also only a small part of the eye. By blurry, I mean the vision was obfuscated. It was a bit if you were wearing glasses that were not really your prescription, but only in a tiny part of your eye, in a tiny part of your vision. So I didn't really know what to do about it, didn't take it seriously. I think a day or two went by before I just made an appointment with an ophthalmologist, an eye doctor. I then just waited a bit more, and I just moved out. I think it was a month after moving out of my parents' place, so I was learning to live by myself. I've been able to talk to them just living with them. They would probably have reacted much faster than me, and I would maybe still have my eyesight. So when I started panicking was that at some point, I don't remember exactly how many days into it, my eyesight became kind of like an hourglass. There was this hourglass vision. I think it was horizontally, I'm trying to remember, vertically or horizontally in my eye. I actually, for some reason, I can't remember it because it did go through both periods. And it was this hourglass shape of just things being blurry, of me not being able to see anything in this hourglass, meaning around it I could still actually see clearly, but in this hourglass shape I couldn't see. At this point, it was too late. I didn't know that yet, but then I was quickly rushed to the ophthalmologist. I was then taken to the hospital, was operated on, but it was too late. The central part of my retina had completely detached, or at least it detached so much it couldn't be fully restored. They attached a ring around my eye to compress it to make sure that the retina is actually held on the eye sticks on the eyeball at the back of the eye. So in that way I have some vision. I learned to see much better with it than I did at first, but I still have issues with seeing things on my left side. I do walk into things more on my left. I do still walk into things more on my left. I am unable to really read because the problem is it can't exactly focus. The left eye can't focus. Sometimes I can read, sometimes I can't read, because sometimes it just depends on how it's like watching a bit like through wavy water or something like that. It floats around, almost like an LSD, a fever dream, or like something you see in movies where, oh, this is what they see when they are high. That's a bit how I see on my left eye, and on top of that, I do see all these particles floating around my eye, so I often have blurry vision from that. I was lying on this grass outside in the open a few months ago, and I was looking up into the sky, and I thought I was seeing just a lot of birds flying around, and no, that's just my eye. That's just things floating around my eye. There are no birds in the sky. So that's what happened to my left eye, and that's what I want to say. If you have anything I just expressed, anything, any kind of blurry vision, just slightly blurry vision in your eye, even if it's just a minuscule fragment of it, immediately go to an ophthalmologist, immediately go to an eye doctor, because if you hesitate for just 1 second, you might lose your eyesight, or at least partially lose your eyesight. So that's the first part of it. If you experience this kind of blurry vision, not blackened, not whitened sight, just unfocused sight, that's what we would call it, unfocused sight, go to an ophthalmologist. Now for the right eye. The right eye was a very different experience. I was sitting in the middle of the night. I go to bed a bit late. I was sitting there suddenly experiencing some kind of blurriness on the left side of my eye, like a smudge. I was wearing glasses, so I tried cleaning my glasses and it didn't really help. And then I realized, okay, this might be something else. Again, I do sometimes experience not having perfect vision. So I was really worried and I was in denial. So I did go to bed hoping for the best. Truth be told, even having experiences with my left eye, I panicked. I got drunk and went to bed. I was really afraid. And I had reasons to be afraid. I woke up the next day with much more blurry vision. I think 20% of my eye was just a cloud, a black cloud. I couldn't see anything. Not completely black at this point, more gray. So I immediately booked a time with an ophthalmologist. I went in, had my eye checked on, and as they dropped my eye to look inside of it, after that, my sight got worse. I don't think what they did actually make it worse was just because it was constantly detaching. So I got an appointment the next morning for, not exactly for surgery, but kind of for surgery. It was a long procedure. They checked on my eye, and yes, of course, I had retinal detachment. At this point, at the time I went to bed, I had maybe lost 70% of my eyesight. It was completely, depending on the source of light in the room, it was either completely black or completely gray. So that's the other thing to look out for. If you have some kind of bubble or some kind of blur somewhere in your eye, immediately go to the ophthalmologist. It happened so fast with my eye that even though I went so quickly to the doctor, I was in for surgery less than 36 hours, maybe a bit more, but around 36, 40 hours after having first experienced the symptoms. And even then, there was still an actual risk I would lose my eyesight. I was lucky I collapsed from the side and not from the center. That's when I would have gone proper blind, or at least having the same issues with my left eye, that I would be unable to read. I would be unable to do most things for potentially the rest of my life. So that is my warning to you, that you should make sure to have your eye checked whenever there's just a slight inconvenience, because it might make you blind. Otherwise, it is a very, very scary thing. It is something that I have experienced now twice in two different ways. The first time, of course, left me worse off than this time. Only that this time I'm in a weird position because I'm in another country where apparently my status is not really that great. So I had to pay for the entire surgery myself, even though I didn't think so. And I was dragged in for tests before surgery, and then they thought, okay, my like the system had denied paying for me, so I had to go back in and suddenly pay a large sum of money. I'm not gonna say how much, but I was very, very, very happy that I actually had that amount of money on my account. Barely, but I did. Otherwise, I would maybe be blind today, because that's how it worked. This country, if I couldn't even like get, okay, you'll just get a bill and pay after the surgery. You had to pay up front. If I couldn't pay up front, I would be blind. That's it's scary. This whole thing is scary. So that's the other warning about this. If you are currently living in a country where you think you would or should have the rights to medical treatment, in my case, a EU citizen living in another EU country, I thought I was cleared. I was told by everybody I knew I would be cleared. Of course, they were not medical professionals. They didn't know my legal status. They didn't know everything. And apparently something has gone wrong at some point while living here. And I wasn't informed about it. The two first employers I had in this country didn't inform me about doing all these things, even though they were almost exclusively hired foreigners. I have grievances, but it doesn't matter. So of course I could have grievances, but nothing matters right now. It's just about trying to get in a better position myself, and also to try and help you. That, of course, I know that you might live in a country where it's either paid healthcare or you're screwed, or maybe you have it through an employer. But for any kind of emergency treatment, figure out what is your status, where do you stand, because you might be in a position like me where you're not as privileged that you can actually pay for your own surgery, and you would, I don't know, lose a leg, lose an eye. So that is another, just make sure you are in a proper position of being able to receive necessary emergency care. And that's basically what I had to say. I will hopefully be able to see well in a short time. This video will be uploaded quite a long time after the surgery. It happened in early September, but I have to edit it, and also my video schedule right now is different. So at the time you're watching this, I hopefully have a fully functioning eye. I don't know. I will write, of course, a little note in case update, or even may edit an update at the end of this video. But that is my situation. That is my status. I could go on, but I think that I have said what I needed to say. It's about trying to get you to be in a better position yourself, take care of your health. Because if you haven't tried it yet, the idea of losing your sight is some of the scariest thing that could happen. And you might bring something else up. Okay, yeah, losing your ear hearing, losing your legs, losing your spine. That's also scary. Sure, all of it is scary. I can only talk about the ones I've experienced, the things I've experienced, which is my eyesight. Take care of your health.
I did not realize that. Yeah. Russell, did you realize that?
No, I did not realize that.
Okay, so with this more heavy subject matter out of the way, personal subject matter, I'll start talking about the movies. As I said, I couldn't really find many movies on this topic. I wanted to primarily focus on movies where one of the main characters, preferably the protagonist, is suffering from this. I will primarily talk about 3 movies, that is Blind Fury, Sightless, and The Scent of a Woman. Those are the 3 movies I'll be talking about, but first I want to bring up 2 honorable mentions. The first movie I wanted to talk about, but that I sadly can't because it requires reading subtitles, is the movie The Eye. I don't remember if it's in Mandarin or if it's in Cantonese, but it is about this Chinese woman who needs eye surgery, or rather, one of her eyes is so bad that she needs it replaced. This movie takes place in an alternate reality where new technology has been invented, where people can donate their eyes when they die. It's new and experimental, but she really needs this eye in order to see. So she agrees on having an eye implanted to replace her non-functioning eye, and this eye belongs to a deceased person. And I thought this would be the best movie I could actually talk about for this video, as I would be closer to that experience than actually the other movies I did find. It is the movie that would, of course, I didn't have my eye replaced, but I could more relate to that, and it's more, not just that, but it's also more interesting with what it does with this concept, because I'm not going to spoil much about it, and also it's been many years since I watched it, but what happens is that she can see the past of this woman who died, whose eye she's now wearing, and she finds out that this woman was killed or something happened to her in this Vietnamese village, and she decides to go and investigate. It is a very interesting concept. I don't remember the movie being very good. I think I was decently entertained by it, but that's why I wanted to give it another watch, another viewing. Sadly, I couldn't do it for this video. It's an interesting idea, and back then you didn't get many Chinese horror movies anyway. It was made back when Japan dominated the Asian market, so it's also interesting just to see a Chinese horror movie. Again, I don't remember if it's mainland or if it's Hong Kong Chinese, but it is a movie I can recommend just because it's a very, very cool idea. And the second honorable mention I want to talk about is Don't Breathe, a movie I've only watched once, but I absolutely loved it. The reason why it's an honorable mention is that it's not a protagonist that's blind. It is the antagonist. And I would say that there are more movies out there where the antagonist is blind, where it's some kind of blind monster or blind robot or blind, well, I guess not a blind robot, but there are more movies out there where the antagonist is blind. And I therefore decided not to include one where the antagonist is blind, even though it is a really good movie. So it's an honorable mention and a clear recommendation. I don't want to spoil much about it, so I'll just say it's a home invasion movie where the homeowner is blind. It's thrilling, it's scary, it's cool, I think it's even a bit funny from what I remember. And that is a movie, it's also very disturbing. But that's a movie I just want to mention and recommend it in case you haven't seen it yet. And an extra honorable mention, or rather dishonorable mention, is At First Sight. I watched it after filming the review, and it's really nothing special. It's just a boring romantic drama with a decent premise. It has Val Kilmer, so that's something, but it's just cliche. It's not great at all. The performances are not good. There's nothing good to say about that movie. If you really love romantic dramas and want one that has a twist of one being blind and then trying to cure the blindness, then go ahead, watch this. Overall, it's just not a good movie, and I can't recommend it at all. And then I want to go into the 3 movies I will be talking about: Blind Fury, Sightless, and The Scent of a Woman. And I will start in the order I watched them with Blind Fury. Blind Fury from 1988 is a stupid action movie that is in equal parts awful and great. I'll just start with the plot. That will give you an idea of what kind of movie this is. The movie opens up with Rutger Hauer being blinded while serving in Vietnam, and for some reason some local Vietnamese people take him in and teach him how to do blind machete fighting. Then the movie drops 20 years or something. And I mean, already here I have so many questions. Who are these people? They are dressed in a very native way, almost like a racist depiction of Amazonians or something. For some reason they take in this blind American soldier, and not only take him in and just, try to treat his wounds or something, but they teach him how to fight and teach him how to do these things. So now he is training with them and giving them off sword stunts where he's chopping off things for them. And it takes years because he's reporting as missing in action. So no American soldier ever finds him while he lives with these Vietnamese people. And then the movie just jumps. I think it's 20 or 25 years. What happened? There's never given any reason or context to who these people are, what's happening to him. And not only that, the movie just jumps 20-25 years, and we are not told what he's been doing in this whole time. Well, what we do learn is that he tracks down some of the people he used to serve with in the unit, and they have thought he was dead for 20 years. For 20 years, I don't know what he's been doing. He does walk into this Mexican cafe where some bad people are harassing him, and he comes very close to, slicing them up. So I thought, okay, he's a bounty hunter, but it looks like he's just a drifter. But how does he make a living? He looks quite dapper in his outfit. What has he been doing for 20 years? There's so many questions that are left completely unanswered in this movie. And that's why when I say it's an awful movie, it is an awful movie, but it's also a low-key great movie. But we'll get to that, the better aspects of it a bit later. Because what happens is that he just trying to find the soldier body. I don't know, has he been looking for his soldier body for 20 years? Or did he suddenly decide to find his soldier body? What has he been doing for 20 years again? And he goes to his house and finds out he's divorced But for some reason he knew where he lived. Did he find him in the phone book? Again, he is blind, but his senses are really strong. He's almost like Daredevil in that sense. That's another thing I could have talked about, but I have reviewed the TV series Daredevil. It is one of the worst videos ever made, but it is out there, so I didn't want to talk about it again. And he finds this wife and son of the friend he's looking for. He finds out that they're divorced and that his friend is now in Reno. The family doesn't know this, but in Reno he is in with some bad guys who threaten to kill him, but instead he will be making drugs for them. And for leverage over him, the gangsters are tracking down the wife and the son to kidnap them. It feels a bit contrived. He's already making drugs for them. Of course, they did threaten to do something with his son, but just the threat itself should be enough. And also, why not the son and the wife? Because they immediately just shoot the wife. And Rutger Hauer is there. Of course, he's blind, but Rutger Hauer is there. And they shoot the wife, but they just tell him to leave. Why? Why are you committing murder, killing a woman, and then not killing a blind man as well? What kind of moral compass is that? Yeah, I guess he's blind, so he can't testify to the police, although he could be able to hear the voice. I don't know how helpful that is. But why doesn't he... Why do they not kill him? They do not kill him before he starts resisting and killing them. The movie is colossally stupid. It is abysmally, fundamentally flawed. It is a really poorly written movie. And not only that, the gangsters are from Reno, so they look kind of like cowboys, but also like rednecks. They are some of the worst gangsters, some of the worst criminals, some of the worst foes I've ever seen in a movie. And that's when I say it's kind of great. The movie's kind of brilliant. That the gangsters are just brilliant in their own way. And we have a cool scene with him because in his cane, he has a sword. And he chops these people up, and it's a cool scene. He does some cool blind fighting. The movie is quite bloody. Not insanely bloody, it could be bloodier, but it is relatively bloody. You could have seen limbs flying around, but not really. But it's cool, And what the rest of the movie is him, this kid they wanted to kidnap. He has to escort the kid to Reno to unite with his father. And that's it. That's the rest of the movie. First of all, of course, he's an honorable man, so yeah, that's what he does. But the way he handles it, for some reason the kid doesn't know the mother is dead. So of course this guy kind of kidnaps the kid. The kid is really an obnoxious kid, one who doesn't listen, one who just acts up and is really annoying being around, a complete asshole. But at this point it's kind of like the man kidnaps him. I mean, this kid should be scared about this guy he doesn't know. Again, I don't understand why the kid didn't hear the shotgun, why the kid is more worried what happened. He might just be an idiot or be in denial. Rutger Hauer could have just said to the kid, your mom is dead, I need to take you to the dad. He makes up a bad excuse, but of course the kid isn't really buying it. So there's an early scene where a police officer, while they're about to board a bus, asks the kid if he's okay. Any normal kid will probably say, hey, this guy's kidnapping me, get me back to my mom. He doesn't do that because the movie wouldn't happen if he did. The movie is just so contrived. The movie is just awfully contrived. And therefore, I don't want to talk about it too long. I want to emphasize a few things about it. But yeah, it's basically a big escort quest between an asshole and a blind man.
I smell horse shit! It's horrible!
When I said it was an action movie at the beginning, it's much more of a drama. It's more of a road movie, almost an adventure. It's about the dynamics between the kid and the blind man, the relationship they develop. It has this very juvenile dimension to it, but it's also a bloody action movie. And it's just too confused. It really doesn't work. Either have a cute movie about a man having to escort a kid to safety, or have a bloody action movie. When you combine the two, you just get a mess. And this movie is a mess. Because they have to have all this humor, they have to have this on-screen charisma, and they just don't. They don't have any charisma. I hate both of them in every single scene they're in together. You just want the scenes to end. Even the moments that are supposed to be sweet and touching, or the ones that are supposed to define the relationship, to build the relationship, the struggle they're having together. Everything is just forced, it's cramped, it's poorly written. Some of it comes off even as a bit of a groomer vibe. It's not good. It's really bad. It has to be the primary focus of the movie. In this movie, it's just having a cake and eating it too. It's half action, half kid escort quest, and it just doesn't work for that reason. But then we do have the few action scenes. That's when it becomes good again. In a silly way. It is an action comedy, but a bad action comedy. So this Reno gang, it really is just a bunch of rednecks. It's really difficult to understand exactly what they're about because they have this main guy who's out to kill the lead character. and he knows exactly where the bus they are at will stop, where the kid then decides to escape. He runs into some cornfields. The bad guy has lined up all of his bad guys in the cornfield, exactly where the kid will run to, so they kidnap the kid again. And then we have the blind man running around the cornfield, killing these crooks. Even the guy eating popcorns, I felt so bad for the guy. He just tries to escape, and Rutger Hauer just fucking bails him with a fucking sword. It has some of those cool scenes. It has this redneck. I thought it was a woman for a long time, but I think it might just be an effeminate man who has these two snub-nosed revolvers. And you're seeing multiple scenes where the person just holding up these two revolvers, but you never really see the person shooting with them. I really wanted to see the person dual wield them, because it is maybe the least intimidating pistol you can dual wield. But that is also what would make it look so funny. And there's so much wasted potential in this movie. And even Rutger Hauer isn't giving his best performance. There's one scene where he's driving as a blind person that's a bit interesting, but the movie is just completely ruined time after time by how stupid it is. Two people in the back of a van talking loudly when they shouldn't, because their kidnappers can hear that they're escaping. Stuff like that. It's just really, really stupid all over. But one thing I really do want to emphasize, and that's what does make the movie somewhat enjoyable and recommendable, even low-key great, that's the henchmen. They are the worst best henchmen I've ever seen. At the bad guy's casino, he has these two bouncers, both having wonderful mullets, one being a beefy, chunky Asian and one being a beefy, chunky white guy. And then on the next floor, next level, almost like a video game, the next level bad guys and next level bouncers are two very beefy, or actually much more very chunky African Americans. The hair game in this movie is just great. It has the best mullets, and the rest of the rednecks are just so poorly dressed, are the worst kind of criminal, like the least intimidating. A lot of them are old, a lot of them are wearing bow ties and cowboy hats and being old and fat, and it's just the least intimidating villains you can have. None of them have any charisma, but there again, it also blends into the comedic aspects of it, so there is some comedy with these bad guys, and that kind of works. And also doesn't. So it is this good bad movie where the bad does triumph the good, because there's just too much time spent on this terrible dynamic and relationship between the kid and Rutger Hauer. One that I never cared about, one that was never funny or interesting to me in any way because it's poorly acted, poorly written, and so contrived. But then you also have the interesting aspects that are all the scenes with the henchmen, the action. It's because they're so unintimidating, so boring, that it actually becomes great. And yeah, there are some good kills, there are some good explosions, there are some good scenes, some good action scenes. So it does have things that work for it. And that's why I can give it a low-key recommendation. It's a funky little movie. It's basically, we have Daredevil at home. But man, if only you could see what I've seen with my eye. You can get the movie for yourself.
Strange.
Now, next movie. Sightless from 2020. This is a movie I won't be saying too much about because honestly, it's quite dull and there's not much to say. But I will of course give you a brief, mostly spoiler-free plot summary. Give you an idea why I don't think it really works as a movie, and also some of the things that work on paper, but sadly the execution isn't great. This is a thriller that opens up with this woman being sprayed with something in her eyes, waking up in a hospital, and learning that she is now permanently blind and nothing will ever cure it. And she has to come to terms with her having lost her sight, while this man, this nurse, assists her with adjusting to her new life as a blind person. And she's with the help of this brother that she doesn't have a close relationship with, given this apartment that she can now use to get adjusted to her new life, and then she can move back home to, well, herself afterwards. And that's where the rest of the movie takes place. And it's difficult to talk about this movie without spoiling it, but I'll try to be vague. And the movie is about her coming to terms with her blindness, trying to adjust to her new life, contemplating ending her own life, trying to find meaning in it, and establishing relationships or relations with the people around her. Weird things are happening with the neighbor. It sounds like her neighbor is being subjected to domestic abuse, and she gets a good feeling of the apartment as she has this man helping her with it, and she ends up falling in love with this man, or at least develops some feelings for him. Saying more would ruin it a bit, but there are aspects of it I can talk about. One thing that really works well with the movie is that we only see what she sees, or rather what she thinks she sees. So for one thing, that's something that makes it much easier to make plot twists in this movie. But it's also used well in scenes where she thinks she hears someone, but then when the person starts speaking, then we see who's actually talking to her. The issue with that is it doesn't work in theory. The footsteps of a small woman is different from those of a big man. And I know that she is just adjusting to her blindness, that she hasn't been blind for long, but I never believe that she can't hear the difference. There's just a lot of things that don't really make sense about the character, about the development, about anything really. There are a lot of things that she can't hear clearly enough, even though she should hear it clearly enough, and that brings her into difficult situations. She can somehow write well enough for someone to be able to read what she's writing. There's just a lot of things that don't really make sense. And where I really lost my immersion is when she has the first conversation with the neighbor. She becomes very antagonistic, and the neighbor at one point asks her about her blindness. And she very angrily says, "How did you know I was blind? Who told you?" I mean, of course, at this point she can mostly navigate her apartment, but anyone would know that she's blind. You don't learn how to look like an able-bodied person that quickly. And she's so antagonistic towards this woman and accuses her of lying. And there's so much about this film that just doesn't work, doesn't make sense. And a major problem of it is her character itself. Her acting is not good enough. I can't say if she's blind acting well, but her acting itself isn't great. I understand why you would be so miserable and hateful after experiencing this, that you become a bad person. And she is just really not behaving well. There are some interesting scenes where they do play with the blindness. It is one of those movies you don't really know what's going on, because she is experiencing things that she apparently isn't experiencing. So they do work that well to some extent. Of course, what it does is that the audience is completely confused as well. The geography not being established, yes, it's a blind person, it makes sense. But you can't have a movie that really is so much all over the place. But returning to her character, she just isn't written well enough. It's not just the acting, her character itself isn't written well enough. The movie starts with her being blinded, meaning we have no idea what she did before her blindness. We do learn early on that she was famous, but isn't famous anymore, or not really. And later we learn she was a singer. My biggest issue with this is that they have given her a career that she can have despite being blind. If she had been working with anything that required vision, if she had been having a lot of hobbies that required vision and suddenly she couldn't do that, spend time on that. That will make us better understand why she is so depressed. Maybe she was a good chef and now she's struggling with... Of course, if you're a really good chef, it's difficult. You know how to cut things without looking. But I mean, a hobby chef, or maybe she's a good, like a visual artist. Have her completely lose her life. It's such a cop-out. It really doesn't work. Yes, losing your eyesight is fucking terrible no matter what you do. But that she actually worked with something where you don't need it, that, okay, it's established she probably doesn't sing anymore, but this is a good time to go back to singing. The visual executions of this movie, some of the ideas are actually quite good, but overall it's just a bad movie. It's not a good movie. It's not a movie you should waste your time on. It's too stupid, it's too frustrating that all the good visuals, all the good ideas are ruined by decisions such as making her blind, but giving her no personal struggles, no, oh, I'll never draw again, I'll never watch a movie again, none of that. None of, how will I find meaning in life now? None of that. It's just her in her apartment being drunk and being scared. A lot of the character decisions that I can't comment on without spoiling the movie, but the character decisions are awful. A lot of the movie makes no sense, or you really have to accept a lot of things for it to make sense. It's just, again, contrived. I should also mention this is the director's first and so far only movie. And it started as a short that he then turned into a full-length movie. And it shows. It shows that there are some good ideas, but that the person isn't experienced enough or talented enough writer, director to make it succeed. Because it just isn't a good movie. It is a movie that I want to see someone else make. The thing is, the movie is very foreseeable. Even though it has some good ideas and good twists, it is very foreseeable. 5 minutes in or 10 minutes into the movie, I called what would happen. This is not a movie I can recommend, and I don't want to waste more of my time talking about it.
Nothing I do will ever please you, will it?
We're both cocks, Paul. Both of us are cocks.
The last movie I'll be talking about is The Scent of a Woman from 1992. A masterpiece I hadn't even heard about before watching it, which I know is on me. It's a movie I do want to say a lot about, but also I do want to really not spoil it. So I will give you the overarching story as briefly as I can. And the reason why it's so amazing is that it's a drama with Al Pacino and this young kid that are essentially diametric opposites, but who are nonetheless working very well together and complementing each other and learning from each other. And as before, I will give a plot summary, a very brief one, as I don't want to spoil this movie. Also, this movie is almost 3 hours long, so there is a lot to talk about, but I will keep it brief. The main protagonist is this young college kid who has been fortunate enough to earn a scholarship to study at this academy, and who really wants to, of course, continue his studies and hopes to get a scholarship for Harvard. He's from this lower income household in rural Oregon, where his parents own a little shop, and he is on this school for incredibly privileged boys, where their parents pay for the studies. So he's surrounded by rich assholes, rich people who have never really had to face any consequences in their life. If they take a risk, most of them will not really feel any consequences of it because the rich parents will bail them out. And he's trying to fit in, and of course it doesn't, because he is really worried about, losing his place in society. He's really worried about losing any aspect of escaping his low-income background, and he's not very confident. He isn't a person who parties, he isn't a person who meets girls. He's a bit of a nerd, a dorky character that some of the others do sometimes talk to, but he's never really a part of the group. He is this guy who will never fit in because he's the poor kid, and who can essentially serve as the fall guy should something occur. And something does occur. Him and Philip Seymour Hoffman, who plays one of the rich kids, one late night at school, witness how 3 of the friends, or supposed friends, are preparing for a prank they will play on the director of the school. And although she doesn't see it, one woman notices that the 2 of them have seen the faces of the people who are pulling the prank. When this prank is then pulled on the director the next day, he becomes incredibly petty and goes on a personal vendetta to find out who has done it, and is pressuring Hoffman and the protagonist into giving up the names, telling the protagonist that if he helps him, he rats them out, he will recommend him for a scholarship for Harvard. And he's left with this dilemma: should he retain unity in the group, not rat them out, or should he prepare for this future of him escaping poverty with a future in Harvard? A future that his parents could never afford giving him. A true dilemma, essentially, because these are not really his friends anyway. Maybe he thinks they are, but they aren't. So it is a good dilemma to have in a movie. And that is his personal dilemma. Then, to earn money to go back to visit his parents over Christmas, he accepts this job to basically babysit a blind retired army colonel, played by Al Pacino. And from the very first second Al Pacino is introduced, he's chewing the scenery. He is amazing in this role. Definitely one of his best performances I've ever seen. He is absolutely spectacular in this movie. He gives us some hilarious scenes. He gives some very deep felt scenes. He's charming, he's vulnerable, he's depressed. He is all the things. He shows a very big range of emotions. And not only does he do that, I would say he plays being blind quite good. He is one of those superpower blind people who just from learned experience, from life experience, can tell a lot by people, can tell a lot about surroundings, just from sensing small things in the air. At one point, the protagonist gives him a bad salute, and he corrects him, knowing exactly how he saluted him, and becomes very angry at him for disrespecting him. And that's the kind of character he is. He's this bitter, drunkard asshole who essentially makes enemies of everyone, always speaks his mind, maybe no longer is a womanizer, but has nothing but women and booze on his mind. And he is a libertine. He is someone who wants to enjoy life, but can't really do it anymore because he's blind and he's struggling with it. And that's the dynamic. He hates his family, he hates everyone, and the protagonist is then supposed to take care of him while his family is off running some errands somewhere for some days. And during this time, Al Pacino manages to lure, or rather press, the protagonist into following him to New York to accompany him for a few days of debauchery. Al Pacino wants to drink, to have fun, to be with a beautiful lady, and then at the end of it, blow his brains out. That's established very early on in the movie. And we then have this dynamic with this man who is tired of life, who's very bitter, who hates being blind, who feels wronged by the world, but also who keeps wronging the world by being this miserable person he is, who has moments of grandeur, who has moments where he essentially comes into this life he was in the past, this playful, but also drunkard person who is charming, who is funny, who is all over the place, who is the center of attention. And then these very vulnerable, very depressed scenes. And we then have this protagonist, this very inexperienced protagonist who doesn't date, who doesn't drink, who hasn't had fun a single day in his life, who has never really enjoyed any type of luxury, trying to accompany Al Pacino and trying to persuade him not to commit suicide. And that's the dynamic we have in this movie. I will not say much more about the movie, but I will add a few scenes here that reflect some of the funny moments, but also some of the more deep-felt, emotional, the drama of the movie that will reflect how great the movie is. And then I will come back and say a bit more.
That's amazing.
Well, I'm in the amazing business. You're human, Charlie. Beer?
I could stay for a while.
Oh, Charlie, you already gave me a day. And for that day, I am eternally grateful. My boy Charlie kept telling me to let her out, let her out. What was I gonna do? Disappoint him?
Yes. Jesus Christ, another sucker who thinks this shitheel's a war hero.
Hoorah. Your friend George gonna sing like a canary. And so are you. And once you've sung, Charlie, my boy, you're gonna take your place on that long, gray line of American manhood. It's a great day for singing a song, and it's a great day for moving along. Tits. Hoo-ah. Big ones, little ones. Are you listening to me, son? I'm giving you pearls here.
So as you can see, this movie is capable of delivering hilarious lines, it is capable of delivering somber moments, and I will not spoil more of the plot for you. I will just end this review by saying that what this movie does so well is that you have these two characters who really complement each other so well. They are the diametrical opposites, but in a way where they learn from each other, where they build on each other's strengths and weaknesses. They are, of course, at different points of their life. One is starting, one is essentially ending. And trying to not find a common ground necessarily, but trying to give each other experiences, to teach each other something. Al Pacino trying to teach him how to be a man, teach him what is the right and wrong to do, and the young man trying to teach Al Pacino that there's still life to be had even though you're blind, and trying to tell him that even though things are looking low, even though things are desperate now, there is a way out. There is always the option of a brighter future. It is a very sweet movie. It is a very early 90s movie. It has this very early 90s sound design. It has these great speeches. It has these long conversations. It ticks a lot of the boxes for movies from the early 90s with this stellar cast and everything. It is just a fantastic movie that I can only thoroughly recommend to you. It is a movie that I really think you should watch. It is great. It is long, but it is great. It has some of the best acting I've seen in a long time. Some of the most fun scenes I've seen in a long time. Some of the most dynamic, fleshed out, well-written characters, well-written dialogues, well-written dilemmas, well-written arcs I've seen in a very long time. So this is just a movie you should watch. Without a doubt, this is a fantastic movie. And having reviewed these 5 movies, it's now time to end this video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening to my little personal story and my retinal detachment awareness, in case you didn't skip that part. I hope you found this video enjoyable, most of all, or hopefully you will be inspired to see or not to see to avoid some of these videos. Hopefully we'll get more videos on the subject of blindness. One movie I could have done, I don't know why I didn't think about that earlier. Dancer in the Dark would be a quite good movie. Why didn't I watch Dancer in the Dark? Anyway, might do a follow-up where I talk about Dancer in the Dark. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. If you have any other movies about blindness or experiences blindness or partial blindness, please write it in the comments. I would really want to know if there are other good movies that deal with the topic of blindness or partial blindness. I really want to see more of those videos, so please do that. Thank you so much for your time. Yes, I talked enough for today. Bye.